Hello there and welcome to Laurence Plays Factorio Planetary Pioneers, where we are once again out on Vulcanus because, well, we're getting pretty much to the end of what we're planning to do out on this planet, I think, at this point. There's going to be a little bit more sort of tidying up and a bit of finishing off here and there, but largely things are now under control and we're ready to think about moving on. And so we've done a bit of expansion out on this planet. As you can see, well, as you may or may not be able to tell from looking at the map, we have expanded our territory out a little bit further. We've popped a couple of medium demolishers, which was quite a challenge. We tried a number of different ways to deal with these, ranging from setting up some nuclear reactors.
Okay, I'm gonna run away now because the nuke.
Oh!
We've lost 20% of our health.
20%, is that all? Sadly, this was a lot less effective than I hoped. So, next I tried setting up a row of turrets with the intention of having them all deactivated until the demolisher got in range, and then delivering an enormous broadside to it as it went past. Stupid turrets attacked!
Oh.
I can't reach the thing up there to turn them on. And I'm grounded. Okay, I didn't die, but... that's so frustrating! Sadly, this didn't work either. The turrets attacked anyway, which I think might be because I didn't run power out to the constant combinator. But either way, it didn't really work. Safir also tried loops of turrets and also poisoning the demolishers as well. The idea being that the poison would cancel out the demolisher's health regeneration, and then therefore the turrets wouldn't have to do as much damage. Oh, there's health.
25% maybe?
Yeah, I don't think this is
I think
working.
that might have gone badly. I think you've got a good arc there, so they may all start attacking it about the same time. Oh, or... Here.
Oh,
here he comes.
He's coming. He's coming.
He's an angry boy. Oh dear, I don't think this is going to go well. He's still green. This had mixed success levels.
Half health.
It's...
Nearly. There we go.
Ooh, yes, well done. And finally, Mike went for just using all the guns all of the time. Oh,
there we go. Oh.
So basically, that was the magic of green ammunition. That was just an absolute slaughter.
50 turrets.
Okay, but... And this turned out to be the most effective way.
Yeah, it could have been worse, but that's still a lot of ammo lost.
And so the first demolisher liberated this area for us down here, and we thought this was a good one to go for because there's a crazy amount of sulfuric acid over here. Not that we actually need that at the moment, but it's nice to have a big patch available. But more importantly, because between these two patches, there's 8 million tungsten ore, and that's a lot. Unfortunately, this patch is actually completely inaccessible. Once we'd liberated the area, Mike came over here to have a bit of a look around, and it turns out there is no way to get the tungsten out. So over here, these lava patches, as you can kind of tell from the map, and I'm not on this planet anymore, so I can't go over and point at it. These lava patches actually touch. There is a complete perimeter of lava all the way around the tungsten patch, and that means we can't get any belts out of here. Now, some of you may be aware that there is another way to get the tungsten out, but we are aware of that. We could run in an elevated railway system that coming over the top of the lava and then dropping it down here, but we decided that was going to be a bit too much of an effort, and we didn't really want to set that up. So instead, we went off and we killed another demolisher and claimed this 4 million patch up here. And this is a much nicer one to claim because, as you can see, there is an easy way at the bottom out at the bottom here for all of the tungsten belts. And that means Mike has been able to cover this area with drills, as you can see, and then he's run a belt all the way down here, down to there's the big balancing thing down the bottom here, and I think Mike's expanded this a bit as well. Yes, he has. In fact, apparently the whole feed system is Mike's doing, and so we've got one belt coming from the mine up at the top. We've got another 2 coming from the mines over here, and then another one coming from down here. Although actually no, there's some merging going on up here as well. So technically we've got 3 coming from over here. And so this should keep our supply of tungsten work going very, very nicely for quite a long time. And we've got roboports all the way up here. So when these patches down here inevitably dry up because we're pulling the tungsten out of them a bit faster, we'll be able to put in an additional belt coming from this one up here. And hopefully that'll be enough to keep everything running at least for a good while. Now that we have so much tungsten ore coming in, Safir has expanded what was previously Mark's crushing area. So the first 2 columns were built up by Mark. And then Safir has added in another 2 columns because, you know, you can never have enough tungsten being made. And then that's all being fed out down here, although it appears there's some sort of jam going on here. It looks like... Ah, yes, we don't have a disposal system for the stone and the coal that's coming out here yet. So that needs to be linked over to this belt. I'm sure we'll knock that one on the head very, very quickly in the next stream, I'm sure. And so then we will have massive quantities of crushed tungsten coming out down here, there's another balancer running down here, and as you can see, we've got more than enough coming through, so it doesn't actually matter yet that this system isn't running fully. We've got plenty of it available. We're producing all of the resources we could possibly need. To extend that, because whilst I've said we have all we could possibly need, more is always better, because those patches will eventually run out, and we do get through a lot of tungsten. So, Mark has put together this rather large system down here, which takes in all of the stone that's being produced by the rest of the factory. So as you may or may not remember, when we turn lava into metal, so here you can see we're pumping out lava, and here we're turning it into molten iron, that produces quite a lot of stone as a byproduct. And so we're feeding that onto these belts down here, and there are other belts coming in from other stone production areas like this one over here, and then all of that is then getting brought up along here through another balancer and being fed into these new machines up here. These ones deal with another new recipe we've discovered since I was last talking about this sort of thing, where, well, we've got an initial starter culture down here, which is making sulfuric bacteria out of coal and calcite and sulfuric acid. So we need to bring all of those in, but that's not too difficult. There's a nice flow of coal available here, and there's calcite available just about everywhere, and we don't need particularly large quantities of it. But that machine is set to only run when there is no sulfuric bacteria on this belt, so it's just for kickstarting. Then we've got all of these additional chemical plants that are doing the sulfuric bacteria cultivation, and that takes in, again, calcite and sulfuric acid and sulfuric bacteria, and the sulfuric bacteria breeds in the sulfuric acid, and we get more of it coming out. So this is a recipe that takes in 1, produces 4. We've seen this before because that's how Tristan is producing the wood down here. And now this is the same recipe for producing the bacteria, but they are then fed up along this belt where they can be taken in by these foundries. The foundries then melt the bacteria and the stone with some lava. So we take in stone and bacteria and lava, and then they produce. Well, they produce they give back some of the sulfuric bacteria, but more importantly, they produce tungsten ore and tungsten triangles, and also some coal and carbon. And all of these are valuable resources that can then put onto the output belt down here. And we get all of those pouring out along here, where so then we split off the stone to reuse it, we split off the bacteria to reuse it, and then that's brought down here where we can take out the carbon and the tungsten ore and the tungsten carbide and the wood and the coal all onto separate output belts, and they can then all be fed off to sensible places around the factory. So the coal gets put back onto the belt over here, but with priority, so it'll then get pulled back in over here, but we'll be using that by priority. The tungsten ore is fed back over to the crushing and smelting systems over here. This is a very, very long belt. You can see why we call them mark belts, can't you? That gets fed in back at the bottom here as a priority, so we should always be using that one up first. The tungsten carbide will also be fed back around and then go into the rest of the factory. Here it comes here, so it's going into a mergermatron over here with some prioritization set and some belt side balancing. Lovely. And then the wood is being fed out to wherever wood goes. That appears to be all the way down here to be fed in along with the production that's being produced from the bacteria method over here, and then into the rest of the factory where we're doing things like making belts and whatnot out of it. But we don't need a great deal of wood, so there is also a system up here that will dispose of any excess. Here we go. So there's a priority splitter here, and then the excess output is fed over here and then just dumped into the lava. So instead of dumping stone into the lava, we're going through a massive process of bacteria and all kinds of and other things in order to dump wood into the lava instead. And as a bit of a side effect from that, we get some tungsten out as well. So, you know, that's all very well. It's working very nicely, and that is going to get us some additional tungsten. Now, I have to admit, I haven't looked into the numbers to see what sort of proportion of the tungsten is being produced by this system, but quite a lot of that is all getting fed back up over here, as I said. And if we watch this, we can see that, yes, a little bit is being used from this belt as well, because of the way the priorities are set up. But I feel like most of it is actually being produced from the new system, which is kind of spectacular and impressive, given that that is all being produced from the waste byproduct of a lot of the metal production. Now, I don't think we've got all of the stone coming over yet. We've got the easy stuff. So along here, it's being produced up here by the where we're making circuits and over here. So all of that's being captured quite easily. But there are other areas, like for example over here, where the stone that's being produced in order to make the molten copper, in order to make the orange science packs, is still just being dumped straight into the lava. Now, actually, that's not that far away from a lot of the other stuff. Now, there are a lot of belts around here, but we do seem to have gone full spaghetti on this planet. So I think it would be possible to run a belt from here round the top and get it over to the recycling facilities over here. That just hasn't been done yet, and there's another 2 inputs available over here for when we're ready for that. Additionally, in here, where we're making the molten iron for all of the machine production, we're again chucking that away, and that we could do with another belt, which will presumably join on. We will be merged with this belt, so that'll come around and collect that one as well. And maybe there's some more being made down here. Yes, here we go. There's a little bit being dumped in down here if this machine ever runs. And there's probably a few others that we could find. Like down here, what's going on here? Yes, this will eventually be chucked into the lava. But this one isn't running very quickly, so this is a lot less serious. We're not throwing away that much stone. But this does mean that I suspect if we start using all of the stone that's being produced from all of the lava processing, maybe we will just about have enough tungsten coming out here that it will produce maybe not all of the tungsten our factory needs, but certainly most of it. And that means that then these patches over here will last much, much longer. We won't have to drag as much down these ridiculously long, narrow belts, and hopefully we won't need to expand the factory and go out and have to deal with more demolishers for quite a while. And also kudos to Mark for managing to cram this whole system in between the coal belts running across the top here and the lava patch at the bottom here. That fits very, very neatly, and I'm quite impressed. Then moving on to building things up on the planet itself, some little things to start off with. I added in some additional steel post production over here, so we've now got 5 machines making steel instead of 1, and that is now, as you can see, making plenty of it in order to allow us to produce all of the machines along here that we need. And so because we're now able to make them a lot more quickly, that means we now have enough and all the belts are filled up. I was expecting to get to a point relatively soon where the belts were all full and therefore we simply had enough of all of the machines being produced and therefore wouldn't need to worry quite so much about producing more of them. We seem to have quite a lot of rockets being launched at the moment. So this is making machines available to the rocket silos down here. But then Safir has come in and expanded the rocket silos quite a lot. So now we've gone from having just a few of them along here. I think maybe we had this double row. He's added in quite a lot more because he wants the spaceship to be able to arrive, be filled up very quickly, and then clear off again very, very quickly. So he's got a lot of extra rocket silos along the top here that are taking in the foundries in order to send them up to the spaceships. There's additional ones down here. There's multiple ones for the green belts because he's reckoned, quite rightly I think, that we're going to need a lot of green belts. And I think he might have added in some more tungsten and maybe some more calcite ones as well. So there's a lot of extra rocket launch capacity available over here, which we are currently trying to fill up with all of the different resources. And the reason that he wants the ships to be able to depart so quickly is because, as we discussed quite a long time ago, it's not very safe to have a spaceship sitting in orbit over Vulcanus, because these days, because we need to have these greenhouses running to make the wood, to make the ammunition, to keep the spaceship safe from all of the rocks that are coming in, we need quite a lot of wood to be available, which means we need quite a lot of water in order to grow that wood, and there aren't a lot of the ice asteroids available in orbit around Vulcanus, so there's a very real risk of running out of water and using up all your ammunition shooting down these metallic or carbonic asteroids that are drifting in towards the ship and not getting any more ice in. And so he set the ship up to depart from Vulcanus orbit quite soon after it arrives to make sure that it never runs out of water. And that means that it's important to have a large number of rocket launches available as quickly as possible. So the ship shows up, we will immediately launch 3 rockets of orange science, assuming we need that. However many rockets of tungsten and of belts and of all of the machines that could be needed anywhere around the solar system. And then we'll quite quickly have a second rocket available as well, because these machines will cache 2 rockets inside them. But you need to get those rockets launched quickly, because in about the amount of time it takes to launch 2 rockets and before you can build a third one in a rocket silo, the ship will probably have departed. So that means it's important to have all of the rockets ready when the ship arrives. And so in an attempt to boost the resources available for building the rockets, Safir asked me to build a system to cache a certain amount of resources for the rockets that are being built. And I've done that by putting in these inline chests like this, so we didn't have to move the rocket silos around. I felt this was a very nice way of doing it. And because we don't want to cache too much stuff in the chests, because as you can see we've got a bit of a shortage of rocket fuel at the moment, so we don't want this chest to fill up until it's full. That would be horrible. And also on the other side, we have these chests filling up with 2 different resources, which means I can't just go in here and go, well, we'll just have 1 stack of rocket fuel, that'll be fine. Can't do that because we need to have some of each. And so what I've done is I've put in a combinator over here that has minus n of all of these things, where n is at the moment set to 20. The signal is sent from this constant combinator on the red cable to all of the inserters along here, and it's having to hop along through the substations on the way through to get the length of cable that's required. But basically it just goes to all the inserters that are loading off the feed belts. We also have a green cable going from the chest into each one of these inserters as well, and that carries the contents of the chest. The 2 of those are then added together in the inserter, because the 2 cables signals meet there, and then we blacklist anything we see from adding those two signals together. So, if the chest is completely empty, it'll only show the -20s that are coming in along here, so we'll allow it to load up with whatever it's seeing. In fact, if we find an example where that isn't full yet, this inserter is seeing -20 coming in along of each of the things coming in along that belt, and then 0 coming in from the chest itself, because there's nothing in there. It adds those two together and goes, well, okay, I haven't got any positive numbers, so it doesn't set any filters on here, so it will now insert absolutely anything it sees, which is great, because if any rocket fuel comes along there, we want it to put it in the box. The ones down here, on the other hand, they're seeing -20 of each of the things coming in. They're also seeing slightly more than 20 of the low density structures and the blue circuits. And so that means they are then being set as blacklist filters, which means this inserter will not insert blue circuits or low density structures. So it doesn't do anything with the inputs coming along this belt, and it lets them pass by where they can be put into other chests. This means that all the chests will merrily fill themselves up to about 20 or slightly over, and then stop loading in. But as you can see down here, whenever we get a piece of rocket fuel put in, it gets immediately loaded into the silo down here. The silo starts using it, and then that means the silo then pulls through some low density structures and some blue circuits so it can carry on running. And then that means when they drop down to 20, there you see then it put in another blue circuit or another handful of blue circuits into the box. So that keeps it loaded to an appropriate amount. The really clever thing about this is, at the moment, these are rather low numbers. We'd rather have about 100 stored in each of these chests rather than just 20, because we'd like to have enough in them that it can carry on building rockets, even if there's a bit of a supply crisis. So when the rocket fuel catches up, or if we speed up the rate we're producing it at, we can come along here and we can open this up, and then we can edit this group here, and we can add in a multiplier here. I could change this to, well, let's set it to 3 for now, and that'll mean instead of sending out -20 on each signal, it'll now send out -60, and now you can see that all of the inserters have started loading up. So there's big gaps in the low density structure feed along here. Okay, a lot of them seem to be prioritising the low density structures, but that's okay. The ones further down will load in the blue circuits as well, so we'll get all those fed in, and eventually the chest will get up to that having 60. So you see this one has now got 60 of each in, so it's calmed down, it's happy now. This one's got enough low density structures but still needs blue circuits, and so on. So you can see doing that will immediately top them all up. However, until we get enough rocket fuel, we don't really want to do that, because it's just going to prevent the rocket fuel from getting through. On a side note, I put in an additional rocket silo over here, which doesn't have anything feeding into it automatically. This one is just here for use for when we want to send up specific things to space. So for example, maybe we want to send up some higher quality foundries. So I can select foundry and tier 3 and then put that in here manually, and then the bots will bring those over, and then I can then send that up to a space platform in order to ship those over to somewhere where I want specifically to have tier 3 foundries. This will work for other things as well. If there's anything else that's being produced on this planet but not being shipped out automatically, then we could do it like this. However, I think Safir has been very, very thorough, and basically everything we could want on other planets has been thought of and shipped out from here. I guess this one could also be used for player characters as well, whenever we want to launch ourselves up to a spaceship to go off to, maybe to Igris or something like that. Previously, I mentioned how the rocket fuel production had failed because we'd used up all of the light oil, turning it into petroleum gas because we hadn't realised that we were going to need lots of light oil. Tristan has rebalanced that by coming in and telling all of these machines down here to only run when there's less than 10,000 petroleum gas available. That's a different way of fixing it to the way I was expecting. My expectation was that we would fix it by having in an additional set of these machines making solid fuel from petroleum gas. But I think this way is slightly more efficient, because it's more efficient to make the solid fuel from light oil than it is to make it from petroleum gas. So if you can possibly do that, it's very, very worth doing. We could have put in the other one as another emergency overflow, but as long as we keep producing at least a little bit of plastic, I think things should be okay there. He's also bumped up the quantity of gears being produced from the gear production system over here, and looking at these and the names on the right hand side, I believe he's done it by putting in an extra 4 across on the top here, so almost doubling it, and also putting in cooling chests along here, because with a green belt bringing the gears up from down here up to the belt production systems up here, it turned out that they're so fast that the gears didn't have time to cool between being taken out of the foundries and running up to here and being used, and that was slowing things down quite a bit. So now we've got some buffers in these chests. We're keeping a row of gears in here where they're allowed to cool down naturally and then can be fed out onto the system that are going further up. Now, interestingly, he's done this in a different way to the way I do it. If we take a look at one of my coolers up here, you can see that we've got a fairly random looking amount going on up here, but that's because the input inserter here is set to always run until there's 1,000 cold steel plates in there. So with these weird stack sizes you get from cooling, it'll keep going until it's 1,000 or just over, and then whatever's been put into there will then carry on and cool. So we've probably got slightly over, probably. Whereas what Tristan's done is to put limits on the chest, so this chest can have 10 stacks, and that means he's not got all the way up to 1,000 because, well, the stacks stop getting filled when they cool, and so that means this is only filled up to 627. Is that going to be enough? Almost certainly. I don't think there's going to be any sort of problems with this system, setting the system up like this, but it's a slightly different way of doing it, and you get these slightly different effects from it. Continuing with Tristan's doings he's also expanded power production over here, so this is the one I mentioned last time as being really close to sulfuric acid pack, which is very, very handy. So he's bringing in calcite up to more chemical plants and more sulfuric acid being used, and turning all of that into steam to power the turbines. And the reason we need all this extra power is whenever rockets launch, we get these massive spikes. You can see them here, these green spikes, because rocket silos use a lot of power when a rocket launches, but not very much the rest of the time. And so, well, we could have gone in and put in a massive stack of accumulators, I suppose, but this is the alternative, and in a way a more sort of useful in the future kind of way of doing it. And so we've now got massive amounts of power available, but sometimes, as you can see, we do spike up to needing enormous amounts of that. So almost an hour ago we used 950 megawatts of power for a little while, so going up to 1.6 gigawatts is not actually that much of an excess. So this feels now quite sensible. We've got a huge amount of headroom normally when the factory's just ticking over, but when absolutely everything kicks in, it's nice to know you can just use that headroom. Also, we do have a load of power available in the accumulators as well, but even so, it's nice to know that that headroom is there for when we need it. Safir has sorted out the delivery of tungsten triangles and tungsten plate that are coming down here. They were originally only being fed to the rocket silos and to this production system up here because I'm apparently a bit short-sighted, and he's now finished that off properly and brought them down, all the way down here to be fed into science production as well, and other machinery production too. It's a little bit spaghetti. You can see they're coming down here in order to go loop round and then back up here again, but that's the sort of the inevitability when you have a rather spaghetti base like this one, unfortunately. And before we leave Vulcanus, I think it's important to note that Safir has also updated the Richard Dean Anderson a little bit, making the ship more suited to what we need. Now, he has said it was a bit of a rush job because the ship is actively needed for transporting stuff around, so he didn't have quite as much time as he would have liked to get everything upgraded properly. But he's added in significantly more storage. I believe we've got another 8 of the cargo bays across the top here, and that means we've now got loads and loads of storage space, which means you can fill it up with all the things that Norvis and the other planets around the solar system could require. He's upgraded the belts around the outside. Are these now green belts? Yes. He's upgraded the belts around the outside to green belts to try and make sure that the ammunition gets more reliably to all of the turrets across the front, and also it means we can bring the resources around a bit more quickly to where they're actually being used. And he says he's improved the logic as well, which is extremely nebulous. I'll have to wait for him to give us a bit more specifics about exactly what he's done there, and then I'll be able to tell you a little bit more about it in a future video. So I think this is a good place to end. We've talked about how things have been upgraded over on Vulcanus. Please join me in the next video where I shall talk about why all these upgrades have been done and where stuff is being taken and what we're using it all for now. And we'll be back on Monday for another stream to sort out any of the problems we've been talking about and moving on, maybe going off to play on Igris a little bit. If you'd like to have a go at this mod pack yourself, check out the Planetary Pioneers mod, now available through the Factorio mod portal, and come along and join me on Wednesday for another Foundry stream where I shall probably be digging lots of tunnels, although I've found a much better way of doing it now, so it's a lot less time consuming and a lot more interesting. And there'll be more videos coming out every Thursday and Friday as well, of course. So please make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any of that. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.